Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Hard Count podcast. It's Friday, and today I got a video about fantasy football for you guys. I know for the past couple days I've been doing regular NFL content, but we're back to fantasy for today. We're doing some start-em, sit-em, some guys that can maybe win you your league matchup if you play them in that flex spot, and some guys that you really could lose you your week's matchup if you end up playing them. So let's start out with my start-em guys, and we're starting with a quarterback here. Quarterback of the Buffalo Bills by the name of Josh Allen. He's playing the Jets defense this week. They're playing the Jets. What else is there to say? It's the Jets defense, one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Very bad secondary. PFF ranked them as the worst secondary in the NFL now that Jamal Adams is gone. I expect a couple passing touchdowns, a rushing touchdown from Josh Allen. Josh Allen led the league in rushing touchdowns among quarterbacks last year, including Lamar Jackson. A little surprising to some people, but he's a rushing touchdown machine. Dual threat quarterbacks are great in fantasy. Josh Allen is that. He's going to get you some yards on the ground. Provides a nice floor for Josh Allen for this week against the Jets. And I think his upside very high because it's against the Jets defense without CJ Mosley, without Jamal Adams. There's not really a big leader on that defense. A guy that is scary on the defensive end. And now you got Josh Allen on that Bills offense with Stephon Diggs and Devin Singletary and Zach Moss and a good offensive line. You've got some pretty good weapons there in Buffalo. Josh Allen's going to be getting you those rush yards. He's going to be getting you those pass yards. He's going to be getting you those touchdowns. I like this matchup against the Jets for Josh Allen. Definitely a start him. I don't know why you wouldn't be starting Josh Allen in the first place, but I still like it a lot. If you got that quarterback decision, definitely start Josh Allen. Next, we've got a wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks, Tyler Lockett. Start Tyler Lockett for the Seahawks. I'm not sure why you wouldn't be starting him. I know it's kind of similar to Josh Allen, but if you're debating playing him in the flex, maybe yes, maybe no, please do yourself a favor. Put Tyler Lockett in the lineup this week. This game is going to be a shootout, one of the highest scoring games of the week. They're playing Atlanta, and we know Atlanta, one of the most pass-heavy offenses in the NFL. Big play after big play, very good offense there in Atlanta. And to keep up with that, Seattle is going to have to score a lot. They're going to have to pass down the field, and that benefits Tyler Lockett a lot for fantasy. The over-under on this game is 48.5, one of the highest over-unders of the week. And I'm very intrigued by this matchup with Atlanta. PFF, again, sorry to go back to this secondary rankings by PFF, but I think it's very helpful. PFF ranked the secondary of the Atlanta Falcons 30th of 32 in the NFL. And they're a terrible pass defense. Seattle is going to take advantage of that. Pete Carroll's a smart coach. Yes, he's a defensive coach, but Russell Wilson is going to be getting the ball down the field to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett is still the number one receiver in that Seattle offense until I am shown otherwise, and I think he's going to get a lot of targets this week. Last year too, we saw the Seahawks play every team in the NFC South. Tyler Lockett played extremely well in those games. Obviously, Atlanta being a part of the NFC South. Last year, against those NFC South teams, Tyler Lockett averaged 28.7 PPR points a game, which is crazy. That speaks for itself. That's a league-winning type performance right there from Tyler Lockett. So we could get another one here against Atlanta. And I think this is going to go over the over-under as well. I think the Atlanta offense going back and forth, big play after big play. Tyler Lockett still the top receiver on that Seattle offense. Must start Tyler Lockett this week as a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 in the flex. Whatever you can. Put Tyler Lockett in your lineup this week. He's going to have a big week. All right, next, we've got another wide receiver on the Philadelphia Eagles this time. Well, I think you already know who it is because there's almost no other receivers that are going to be playing that are notable. It's Desean Jackson. I'm starting Desean Jackson all day. I picked him up in my drafts for the sole purpose of starting him for the first couple weeks because of those injuries in the Eagles receiving core. The Eagles, again, they're down their top two receivers, Alshon Jeffrey, Jalen Reagor this week, who would be taking up a lot of those targets. We got a favorable matchup against Washington, who doesn't have a good secondary now they lost Quinton Dunbar, who's one of the better cornerbacks, who's now on Seattle. But you got a favorable matchup against Fabian Moreau. who is not the best cornerback in the NFL, finished outside the top 100 in terms of PFF grade for corners last season. And this Washington defense allowed 11 touchdowns to road wideouts last season. Definitely a defense that you want to start wide receivers up against because they're going to be getting the ball down the field. They're going to be getting touchdowns. And Desean Jackson is going to be getting the ball down the field. He's going to score a couple touchdowns. Not to mention Miles Sanders will be limited for that Eagles offense as well. So I like Desean Jackson to be getting even more targets. And then also what I found interesting, last season, before D-Jax got injured, they played the Washington Redskins. He finished the game with 8 receptions, 154 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's 34.5 PPR points. I could see it happening again. I think he's a must-play in the flex this week if you have the option to. Please play Desean Jackson in the flex this week. If you have him on your rosters, I'm playing him this week. You should too. Start him. All right. Then we got our one running back on the stardom list. We've got James White. I'm never a big fan of starting New England running backs, wide receivers. Usually it's a rule for me. Do not draft New England players because you never know what goes on there. But I do know that James White is going to have a big week. It might not be one that you feel super good about, but I can confidently tell you, play him in the flex. He will do a good job for you. He offers a very attractive floor, reliable role in that New England offense as a pass-catching back with Cam Newton, who loves to dump it off to his running backs. Nice matchup this week. Miami allowed the 4th most scrimmage yards and an average of more than 26 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs last season. Not to mention their secondary in Miami has gotten better, so I wouldn't be surprised if the receivers a little bit more shut down than usual, and they're going to have to be dumping off to the running backs, getting the run game a little bit more heavily involved. I like White as a safe flex starter who's going to get plenty of targets from Cam Newton in week 1. Damian Harris on injured reserve, Sony Michel on limited snaps. I love James White this week. I think he provides a very solid floor and a guy that could be getting a lot of receptions. We'll see, especially with the limited other 2 backs. So yeah, definitely a guy that you can play in your flex with confidence this week, James White. And that ends our stardom category. Now we're moving on to our sit-em guys that could maybe you play them and you're probably not going to feel too good about it when the week ends. And the first guy is Leonard Fournette. Do not get caught up in his name. I know he's Leonard Fournette. Jacksonville Jaguars running back last year. He was a guy that you would always start at running back. Don't do it again. Don't fall for it. Yes, he's on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, and what do I always say? Good offense equals good fantasy production. But this is an exception because Fournette in that Jaguars offense relied on very, very heavy carry loads last year. He was inefficient on those carry loads. He was getting, top 3 workload in the NFL in Jacksonville. He's not going to be getting that here, and that's pretty safe to assume. I don't want you to start him in the flex. It's going to hurt your team. Fournette, again, Bruce Arians, he's insisting that Ronald Jones is going to be the lead back, and I don't doubt it at all. I think Ronald Jones is a very solid back. I think they're about equal in terms of play level, and even if not, the carries are going to be split RB by committee, so it should be interesting to watch. I don't know how those carries are going to unfold. There's got to be someone that you can play in the flex other than Leonard Fournette that is going to do a better job for you, much more safe. Not to mention the Saints had the 4th best run defense in the NFL last year. So you're looking at a guy that isn't even by his coach said isn't even going to be the number 1 back. He's inefficient against a very good run defense. I just don't see any reason to play Leonard Fournette in your flex spot this week. So yeah, definitely do not play Leonard Fournette this week. We'll see how those carries get spread out among the backfield. If Leonard Fournette come out there and is the number 1 back clearly, then it's a different story for next week, but I'm not projecting it at all. So yeah, that's why Leonard Fournette is on the sit-em list for this week. Do not play him. Next, we've got a group of guys, all the Jaguars running backs. That includes James Robinson, Chris Thompson, Raekwon Armstead, Divine Ozigbo. Yes, 2 of those guys are not playing this week, but James Robinson, Chris Thompson, do not play them. Just too much uncertainty. I'm not going to talk about this for too long. We'll see, again, similar to the Leonard Fournette situation, we'll see after week 1 how those carries are really spread out in that offense. it's a bad offense. Just as I said, good offense, good fantasy production, bad offense sometimes means bad fantasy production. So we're looking at a bad offense with RB by committee. We haven't seen any of these guys really play before. So yeah, I think that's enough to say about the Jaguars running backs. Do not start them this week. They're only going to hurt your squad. We'll see you next week, but yeah, for now, sit them. Next, we've got another running back, Antonio Gibson of the Washington football team against the Philadelphia Eagles this week. And I know you might be a little excited to play Antonio Gibson in your lineup because you drafted him. You think you got the steal of the draft, and I agree. He was a good pickup late in the draft. He is a good, solid option with a lot of upside this year in that Washington run game if he can take over the backfield. But I think this is kind of a situation where I'm not comfortable playing Antonio Gibson until I really see how that backfield plays out. It's RB by committee. If we're noticing a trend here in week 1, I'm staying away from the guys where I'm not certain about their situations because they can play out in all sorts of ways. We don't know. We could see Antonio Gibson go out there and get 16 touches. We could see him get 5, 6. So I'm veering away from the high risk, high reward guys like Antonio Gibson this week that I don't like their situations too much. Yes, if things go right and he gets all the carries, I like the situation, but we're not sure about it. We're still going to see a lot of the other guys getting involved. J.D. McKissick, Bryce Love, Peyton Barber. I don't think he's going to be putting up crazy production week 1. So I think, again, after week 1, similar to the James Robinson, Leonard Fournette situations, we'll see how those carries are distributed. But right now, I'm not comfortable playing Antonio Gibson in my flex when I've got maybe a wide receiver or another running back that is in a situation that I'm more certain about the carry distribution or that they're going to be getting receptions. So yeah, I'd rather play a person that I'm certain about than Antonio Gibson this week, who we don't really know too much about what's going to go on in that backfield. And not to mention that the Eagles have a good run stopping defense as well. You got Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox. So I'm just not comfortable playing Antonio Gibson this week. Then we've got our final guy on the sit-em list, final guy of the video. Our one wide receiver on the sit-em list. Just don't start him. AJ Green. I told you guys not to draft AJ Green. And if you still somehow did, well, then you should be regretting your decision because for me, he's a sit-em week 1 against the Los Angeles Chargers. Green hasn't played an NFL game since week 1 of last season. And he's played 9 games in the past 2 seasons, 32 games. He's played just over a quarter of the games in that span. He just has not seen the field at all, and I think that's definitely a concern for me. How is he going to get on the field? How is he going to look? How is he going to play? Is he going to be AJ Green of old? I'm not thinking so. Maybe, but I think, again, we've got a rookie quarterback with a bad offensive line. He's going to be under pressure this week from Melvin Ingram, Joey Bosa. Should be interesting to watch. I think we have no idea what the Bengals are going to look like. I know Joe Burrow loves to target the slot, and lucky for him, they've got a very talented slot receiver there in Cincinnati, Tyler Boyd, who's going to be getting a lot of targets. AJ Green is going to be up on the outside against maybe Casey Hayward of the Los Angeles Chargers, who's one of the more underrated cornerbacks in the NFL. I think he's a top 7 corner in the NFL for sure. This is a Los Angeles team that led up the third least fantasy points to opposing wide receivers last season. So I'm just not confident in this matchup at all for AJ Green. I think Tyler Boyd is going to be getting a lot of targets from Joe Burrow right out of the gate. To make him feel comfortable, he's going to be passing to the slot. Not so much passing to AJ Green. So I do not feel comfortable starting AJ Green this week. We just don't know what we're going to see from him. We don't know what we're going to see from this Bengals offense. And I don't love the matchup against Los Angeles either. So yeah, sit AJ Green, play someone else in that flex if you can, someone that you're more certain of the situation for. So yeah, and has a better matchup obviously. So yeah, that's my week 1 stardom sit-em for fantasy football. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'm so excited for Sunday's games. Hope you enjoyed that Chiefs-Texans game last night. It was a great one. Well, not so much a great one, but it was fun to watch football again. So yeah, thanks so much for listening. Peace.